Ja, meine Damen und Herren, herzlich willkommen. It's a really great honor. He's one of the leading architects of our time, and he has especially close ties to Germany. You all know his amazing work he has done at the Neues Museum, at the Museumsinsel, and he's currently working on the restoration of the Neue Nationalgalerie, Kulturforum, and you know his designs for the James Simon Gallery? That's the right expression. The new entrance building of the Museumsinsel, and we're very honored that he's here. But now he will talk about The Night of the Hunter by Charles Laughton. Please welcome Sir David Chipperfield.
Thank you very much. I feel very much out of my depth tonight, more than normal. If I speak about architecture, everyone expects me to say something intelligent, but at least tonight you know that I don't know much about film, so I'm not going to. And I'm not sure I'm really going to be able to explain my choice so succinctly. We all know that horror when you're asked your favorite something. We can always think about 5 or 6 favorite things, but to choose one thing is a sort of very difficult thing. And I think I can't say that my favorite film is this the film that's changed my life. No, I can't say that. I can put 15 together. But this was a film that, I mean, clearly I had to try and come up with something that might not be so well known. That seemed to me a criteria. And I thought it might be interesting to bring a sort of Anglo-Saxon film more than a European film. And in my own autobiography, I have to say, I saw this at some point, you know, as a student. I used to watch a lot of films as a student. I don't have so much time now, but this film did impress me. I mean, it will impress you, and maybe not always in the most comfortable way. It is quite a scary film. And I'm not really someone that, you know, likes scary things. This is, so in some ways it's a strange choice. The director was Charles Laughton, and it was the only film he directed, and Charles Laughton was probably the greatest British character actor. I mean, he was a giant of the, literally, a giant of the English stage, and from film perspective, you might know him as Captain Bligh on Mutiny on the Bounty, which was a fantastic role that he played. But he was, first and foremost, a great stage character actor, and had been brought up in, you know, on the theatre, on the stage. And I think that one of the qualities about this film, I mean, again, don't take notice of anything I say, because I'm way off my way out of my boundary here, but it seems to me that this is has a very strict form to it. It is a tale. It's sort of a morality tale. It is nearly theatrical. There is a sort of very strong form, and I suppose, and I guess we're going to talk about that later. I am interested in film about the way that certain films exploit the form in terms of the way a story is told, the way that you are kept on your seat to know, you know, that there's some sort of relationship between the overall shape of the film and the pace of the film and the depth of the characters, etc., etc. I get the sense that that there is a sort of something slightly old-fashioned and traditional about the structure. I also think it is Robert Mitchum's best performance. It is an extraordinary performance. It is a morality tale. It's and I should say also Shelley Winters, who is, you know, I think a really great actress, because she often played these slightly unfortunate roles. you know, Place in the Sun was another, you know, I had hundreds of films that I wanted, you know, Place in the Sun was another film that I would have introduced. Shelley Winters playing the unfortunate competitor to the most beautiful Elizabeth Taylor. Shelley Winters was always the slightly overlooked and you know, unfortunate character, and she played that role amazingly. So I think there are some incredible actors. I think the format is amazing, and it's quite frightening. So I hope you enjoy it.
Ja, hallo und guten Abend, meine Damen und Herren. Mein Name ist Burghart Klaußner. Ich bin Schauspieler und auch ehrenvollerweise Mitglied im Vorstand der Deutschen Filmakademie. Und bin gebeten worden, heute Abend, was mir ein großes Vergnügen ist, dieses Gespräch mit Sir David Chipperfield zu führen. Mr. Chipperfield, where are you? Oh! I didn't really get to see you getting up. That's great. That's discreet.
Like Robert Mitchum.
Like Robert Mitchum, in a way. Let me ask you one question. In the beginning, you said you saw the film first when you were a student at the Kingston Technical
Well,
College?
I was at Kingston School of Art. Yeah.
In London.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, as you are a farmer's son, during the film I thought maybe you'd also like the film because there are so many animals in it. I mean, we have a fish, a milk-dripping cow, a singing canary, a turtle, rabbits. We have an owl. How do you think of that?
Yeah, obviously I suppose there's some connection. No, I think what was interesting was the sort of artificiality of it as well. You know, that it was, that it's clear that those scenes are so staged. You know, there's so even the rabbits. You know that someone's somehow holding those rabbits down, and these are, they are devices, and I think what I quite liked about that, it's the sort of theatricality of the film, which I liked. And I mean, I haven't seen it for a long time, and suddenly tonight I felt really responsible for it. It was very painful to, normally you just go and watch a film. You don't normally feel so responsible for it as well.
Don't feel responsible. I mean, we all liked it. And how many people didn't know the movie? Show up, please. You see, it's a number of them. That's great. No, I was just asking this question because, of course, the connection of art and nature, of rural scenes, combined with a sort of very special artwork, seems something special to me concerning that film. What do you think?
Well, I think that there's always concern about, I mean, I think in all mediums one is playing sometimes with notions that might be referred to as being, playing with ideas of authenticity and reality. And of course, in pursuing and looking for that, you are using artificial methods. So there's always a negotiation between artificial manipulation in service or in the process of often, trying to find authentic, which is a sort of strange word, but, in a way, universal and common ideas. So this idea of playing with the artificial in order to create something which is somehow realistic is clearly the territory of film, and it's very interesting to see a film like this, which goes to a very artificial series of devices, in order to create something which has maybe an intense feeling. And one can say that, architecture is like that. We are playing with, we're using artificial methods in order to try and create a sort of, not only just a reality, but some sense of authenticity, to try to find things which move you or appeal to you or have a commonality.
Yes. Well, people say your art, your kind of architecture, is defined in a way by putting something modern, new, to something existent, and to find a way to combine those two, in a way, antipodic things. So when we remember the scene, those two kids coming up with the boat to that barn, which is very impressing, like having built by Robert Wilson.
Yeah,
I
no,
suppose
absolutely. It's very.
No, Wilson. It's like a Wilson scene. So and still, the content of it is that fate of these children. Isn't it a movie also about children and their fears and hopes?
Well, I think they're the device that you experience this through. So they are the thread, and they are your perspective in some way. You have an affinity and an empathy with them.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Obviously, but
yes, obviously, yeah, that's true. Do you remember the first time you saw the film? Do you recall? Can you recall your feelings when you first saw it?
No. I just remember it being impressive. I've seen it a few times. I saw it when I was a student, and then when my children were growing up, we all watched it together, and of course it impressed them and frightened them. And yeah, I'm not. Going back to the sort of first thoughts about this. I don't think it's fair to find a film which says everything about you. And I would be nervous if this said too much about me. And of course, the question is, you're asked these questions, and so then the first response, or at least there's a certain prejudice that you should choose something connected to architecture. So Metropolis or The Passenger or something, things which have, and then in a way you resist that because why? I mean, because surely you should just choose something which you enjoy within that medium itself. You should be, the fact that you enjoy it just as a watcher an amateur watcher of movies more than an architect. It shouldn't really make that much difference. So it's a highly personal choice, and of course I could have made many other choices, but you start with a list and you start excluding, out of your 20 favorite films. Well, 3 or 4 I have to exclude because they belong to Wim Wenders, and that would be a bit stupid to show American Friend or something like that here. Then I would say my other favorite films are Hitchcock. I mean, when I was a student, I watched, as many Hitchcock films were available, and even ones that weren't that available. And I think he was, a real. I find him very interesting in the same way that I find this film quite interesting. I mean, in a way, this was a sort of surrogate Hitchcock film, because I thought it was a bit too obvious to choose a Hitchcock film. So I'm sort of trying to rewind my whole methodology here. So the reason I like Hitchcock, and interestingly, of course, there is now a movie about the Truffaut-Hitchcock interview, which I have been giving to my students for the last 25 years. You know this wonderful interview between a French intellectual and a grumpy Anglo-Saxon, which is the most wonderful discussion between two very different ways of two people who have very different views of the world, culturally and professionally, and you can, as you read this book, you start to enjoy the sort of growing empathy that the two characters have. I'm going back to this because I think that why I like Hitchcock so much, and I think that's what appeals to me about the Lawton film, because I think it is quite Hitchcockian in that way of being quite theatrical, because they're not worried too much about authenticity in the way you represent it. It's like you say that, that Robert Wilson type riverbank. I mean, they're all, all of those scenes are quite artificial, but I think there's something very interesting in the way that Hitchcock and in this case Lawton, play with a story and emphasize and spend so much time, bringing artificially emphasizing things, and I think that that's what's interesting in the sort of any creative process, is the fact that you're giving priority to things, and you're trying to find through artificial means ways of nearly sometimes over emphasizing in order to make the point, and I think that manipulation in film is quite fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Is that the reason why we sometimes have the feeling it's anti-psychological also, even in the way they act? Like with Mitchum, you often have the feeling, this is my opinion, that he's in a way ironic from time to time, and his eyes look in a certain way. So I think the anti-psychology is also a sort of criteria for that way of getting closer to reality. It's a special way, I think.
But I also think the other thing that was interesting here was that it did ride very much on the performances. It's a theatrical thing in that sense that you wonder whether this film would have been half as good without Robert Mitchum. I mean, I think it's a sort of extraordinary performance that he manages to take you through all of this as the protagonist, where he's bad, and he's a sort of very ambiguous protagonist in a way. I mean, clearly there isn't much love. There's more, the hate obviously is winning, but he's not a sort of classic villain.
No, he's stating his points. Is it a film about religion also?
Yes, obviously, and it must be. It's obviously a film about a part of America. I mean, there's a certain. I mean, I quite like the idea that the river is somehow a structure. I think that's quite interesting. I mean, but clearly, God is a theme, or belief is a theme, and obviously, the relationship between man and woman is a theme, and children, the innocence of the child. And I love that point when she says to John at the end, so you're never stronger than when you're a child. I mean, I think that was rather beautiful. That's a
very, very interesting point. So actually, it seems to be a film about simple items in a quite artificial way from time to time, at least. I mean, it's simple items like the love of children to their parents, and especially when this wonderful scene when Mitchum gets caught by the police and the boy remembers his father being caught.
Yeah.
That reminded me to the Fahrraddiebe, to the thieves of bicycles, when the boy cries in the street, ba, 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 ba. So
no, and he feels empathy again. I think that's really interesting.
Yes. And about acting, I'd like to ask you one more question about the acting of Mitchell. When he finds that God is speaking to him, or when he pretends so, there's one special scene where he acts utterly extreme. I like giving his head into the sky, and in the end, when he cries like an animal, when he's been shot, when he goes really far with his means, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think it's very expressionist in the way that it's filmed. Yeah. It's very exaggerated. I mean, that scene when he's in the bedroom with the knife, it's the whole configuration, the shape of the room, which is a sort of church-like structure nearly. You couldn't film that in a room, and I presume, it's like a stage set that's been cut, and then the camera's further back. So all of this is very, very artificially set up to make these very dramatic but that's what I quite like about it, that it became something out of pieces. But if you couldn't really, you can't build a film like that together in a logical way. And we discuss in design a lot that often you pursue a number of ideas, and you might try and be quite logical in the way that you elaborate and you articulate certain ideas. But there is a moment in that design process when those ideas somehow fuse together, that they're not just separate lumps. Mm-hmm. The ideas aren't separate lumps somehow in a clever and organized way. Mm-hmm. But they fuse and become something more than the group of lumps, if you know what I mean. They become more than a collection of separate things, and they start to have a sort of conglomerate quality. Yes. That it's like cooking. You can make a soup, you can put all the pieces in, but at a certain point, chemically, it turns into a soup. It goes from being the pieces and water or whatever into something which takes on another quality, and all of those pieces are still in there. And if it's a good soup, it's the materials are discernible, but it also transforms and becomes something else. And in design, we always enjoy that moment when it sort of takes over. The design takes over, and in a way, you start following it.
And you can define this moment, this magical moment?
You know when it's happening. You know when it's happening, because at that point, it starts to take on its own momentum. It's taken on its own life. Yeah. So at that point, then the question is, how do you feed this? So you don't anymore have to be creating it so much. You have to start
following it
and feeding it. Yeah. And I think when those moments happen, you get something which you couldn't preconceive. And I think film like this is, I think if you took it to bits, you'd just crucify it. I'm sure you would just throw it away. Mm. But somehow, in my opinion, it, because of a combination of things, which are none of which are necessarily consistent, because it's full of corny. When we look at this now, it's also very corny. These sort of very home philosophy, this middle American, way of home truths, and it's a bit cozy in some way, but we know we can give that. We like that now because we've got distance from it, so we don't necessarily take it too seriously. But I think what's interesting for me, it's an example of a film that's become something out of all its disparate pieces.
Yes. Yeah, he's right. It's true. This movie exists of very different sort of parts, like we mentioned before. But
it's more like a play, actually.
It's more like a play. It's been performed nearly like a play. But as for your work as an architect, I'm really fascinated from that you say you can define the moment where the structure or the design becomes its own way, and you just have to follow it. I mean, this is what we would call genius, wouldn't we, in a way?
No, I don't think so. I think it's when, because architecture is like filmmaking. It's a collaboration of a whole load of people and efforts and ideas and processes which are coordinated. So there are a lot of commonalities with making film in that sense. It's a sort of conspiracy, and you can't cook that whole thing on its own. You can't somehow predefine it. There has to be it can only happen at that point of collaboration. I don't just mean by lots of other people, but in a way, it has to be the consequence of collecting together the things that you have to respond to. You can't just somehow say, I know what it's going to be before it happens, because you've actually got to go through an analytical and an exploratory process. It's quite difficult to have black and white and some sort of a priori preconception to say, I'm going to design a building and it's going to be like that, because the building has to do a whole load of things, and before you've got to understand what it's got to do and where it's going to sit and what the conditions are and all that, you can't start conceiving. You can't start so you need to know the rules before you can start playing with them. So it does congeal at some point. So before you can put everything together, you've got to have, in a way, disassembled or at least assembled the raw materials. I think the difference in filmmaking to architecture is that our conspiracy is never is spread out. So we do a planning process that may take 2 or 3 years, and that will happen, over time with lots of different people and in different rooms and maybe even in different parts of the world. When that planning is done, that's the blueprint for the building that then another group of people take on and build it. So we are never all in the same room, taking the blueprint and the realization together in one action. Those two actions are separated, so we don't get the benefit of being there in the making. In a way, we have to define how something. So it's like making a film where all you can do is leave the instructions, and give it to somebody else then to make. So we can't have a dynamic and reactive process. So that focus. So there's two things which we miss in a way, which is why it must be easier to make films than it is to be an architect, or more rewarding. That first of all, everybody's there when you're doing. You somehow, the making is, the paradox for us as architects that we work with the most physical of things, and yet we are not at that physical moment. We're not there. It's like not being there for your child's birth or something. I mean, you're missing. Strangely, you're missing that act. That's one thing, and the second thing is we can't react to it because of that. We can't say, what? Let's do this one more time, which would be great. Because it's always a take. I mean, there's never a chance to say, well, I think it was good, but why don't we make the window a bit bigger?
Yes.
you can't do that. You've got to.
So you have to project everything in advance. But this is the reason also maybe why you discuss and think such a long or a rather long time before you make your first blueprint, right? Because you have to, as you said, collect all these items that are
because we take such a long time, or architects take a long time?
No, I don't know. I have no idea what the other architects do. But for a film, of course, you have to have that script. And before you don't have the script, you can't start. And as you know, Billy Wilder said, the most important thing for a film is the script, is the script, is the script. So...
well, for us, it's the plan, it's the plan,
it's the plan.
it's the plan.
It's the plan.
But once, you know, with that script, Billy Wilder then, you know, makes the film and is in control of everything that happens, you know, both in terms of the creation of the scenes and the editing, presumably, that happens afterwards. So, you know, you're still deeply involved in that process, whereas once we finished our script, we just have to sit and wait for the and wait for the film to, you know, wait for it to be played.
But for instance, I'm really admiring one building in Berlin. This is the Galeriehaus, the gallery house. I don't know what you would call it at the
Heine Bastian's gallery on Kupfergraben.
Yeah, but wie sagen Sie? How do you say?
It belongs to Heine Bastian.
Oh, okay, it's to Heine Bastian. I didn't know that. Anyhow, this is a marvelous shaped building. It's a masterpiece. And there's one detail about it that I learned through reading in a book about you, because I didn't see that at the first moment. But then when I re-looked at it, I realized this is unbelievable to project in advance. You took a window, and as you saw, there was a pillar on the old building next side. You shaped the window. I explain it in German, because you know what he did. Also hat ein Fenster gemacht, und weil das Nebengebäude, an das direkt anschließt, eine schöne alte Säule noch an der Seite hatte, hat er das Fenster auf so eine bestimmte Art gebildet, dass man diese Säule immer sehen kann, was natürlich kompliziert ist, wenn man direkt an ein anderes Gebäude ranbaut. Why do I tell that story? Because of projecting. Because you knew in advance this should be a vital detail to do. And you couldn't have changed it whilst constructing. Right?
No. I suppose one advantage, you know, if I'm looking at, you know, what advantages we do have, as opposed to a filmmaker who has to start from a completely blank piece of paper. First of all, we have a client that comes to us and wants something. So we have a more precise purpose, I suppose, in some sense. Although that's not always useful. And secondly, we have a place or a physical context where this thing will be. It's not going to be possibly seen in a movie house like this, or on someone's DVD player, or in an airplane, or whatever. It's always going to be in that one place. So that one place, whereas a film can't necessarily start with such a clue, we can start with the place. So where our buildings go, you know, can be very important place to begin. And I think why we have enjoyed working in Berlin is that, in some sense, the context of Berlin is, you could argue, is probably richer than many others. Why do I say that? Because, of course, of the history that the city's been through, that has meant that there is an incompleteness to the city, that the city has many interpretations. It has been interpreted so many times, and it remains incomplete. And therefore, whereas if you're working in Paris or even London, maybe, you know, the context is somehow a bit more prescribed. In Berlin, you are continuously, I mean, depending where you are in the city, but generally, if you're in somewhere like Mitte, where we were there, you are engaged very much in not only what's on the ground in front of you, but what has been on the ground before, what's been left, and what's incomplete, because the city has an incompleteness, not only because things don't exist, also because things that used to exist don't exist, if that makes any sense. So we're playing also not only with what's not there, but also what we've lost, because the memory of that is something that you can't dismiss. So Berlin is a fertile place to try to make, to use the place where you build. I mean, there are some places, if you were building in Doha, that doesn't give you much. There's not much back from there. I'm not picking on Doha in case any, or even a lot of contemporary cities with the context doesn't give you much. But Berlin, you scratch the surface of Berlin and you find history. So in the context, the project you were talking about, it was a missing corner, and therefore, one of the things that we could consider is in what way do we address this missing building? Do we make something completely different? Do we complete? Do we make it as if nothing had happened? Do we try and find something in between? And this is, something that we find ourselves continuously doing in Berlin, and it's something that we really enjoy because the canvas is quite rich from that point of view.
Yeah. And let me ask you, are you a moviegoer in a whole?
Yes, I would say we're more theatre goers, possibly. I mean, London has the most fantastic theatre. I mean, we are blessed with extraordinary theatre. So my wife is incredibly diligent about it, and because in London you have to book your tickets months ahead, and so she does that, and we see the most fantastic productions. But we enjoy movies, and we go, not as much as one used to.
Do you remember the last film you've seen?
Yes, we saw something. What did we see? We saw something on the weekend. What was it? Huh? Oh, Spotlight, yeah.
Spotlight, you saw.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah. Well, I think we come to a sort of an end of the speech, but if anybody in the audience has a question, please do so and ask.
Except Vim. He's not allowed to ask a question.
Okay, except for Wim.
I would like to know, was it a big difference when you watched the movie today to the time when you saw it the first time or the second time or with your children? Because it seemed the storytelling has changed in the last 40 years. So do you have a different feeling now watching the movie compared to the other times?
Well, I suffered tonight because I felt responsible for it, so I was just terribly worried that people weren't going to enjoy it. And then I just thought, why did I choose this film all of a sudden? No, I still think it's a good film. Whether, it's like I said before, it's very difficult to know how you should respond to this. When someone says, "What's your favorite building? What's your favorite piece of music?" Giving 10 favorite pieces of music is reasonably okay, or 10 favorite buildings, or 10 favorite films. But to pick a film is always difficult. No, I think I had the same impression tonight as I saw it last time. I mean, I sort of enjoy the artificiality of those that scene and the very exaggerated scenography, this very exaggerated expressionistic shadows and these created sceneries which are totally fabricated and very obviously sets. I find that very interesting. And also the sort of nearly the theatre-like morality play of it, that it's not trying to be a real reality. It's trying through, as happens on the stage. I rather like plays for that, in the sense that they accept their limitations as an interpretation of reality, and I think that was something appealed to me about this when I first saw it, and that combination of the visual strength of it and the story. It seemed to me a very well manipulated story. Oh. I'm not sure I'm going to need it. No more questions.
Well, people are shy.
Yeah,
Of
I don't
course.
think so.
As we are. Then thank you for your visit, thank you for your proposal. Vielen Dank für den tollen Film und alles Gute, kommen Sie gut nach Hause. Thank you very much.